just listening to this reading being read as opposed to reading it myself, I'm just touched again by Swami Kriyananda's incredible ability to make all of life's lessons and everything about our spiritual path, the way, just seems so obvious. And when you listen to that and you think, of course, and then you realize that, the 5 foolish virgins, they were also pretty highly evolved souls. They wouldn't have been sitting there waiting for the Christ consciousness if they weren't. They weren't just, we call them foolish. He named them that. It's wonderful, but that's not all that they were. And yet they became complacent. And you begin to realize when you read this how easy complacency can slip into our lives. It really makes you want to wake up. I'm looking for a little joke, which may or may not be funny. We were trying to take score in the back. Is this funny or not? Literally, I mean it. But I'm going to be very brave because it appeared in my inbox this morning. It appeared in many people's inboxes because it came from Ananda village. So here's a picture of what are called Reformed Buddhists. And they're sitting there looking actually very grim. And some of them are holding up a sign that says, "Don't make the same mistake twice." And then another sign that says, "Say no to reincarnation." Gary just gave me the thumbs up. I'm going to read you one other thing that came to me at about 6:30 this morning. Very touching. Many of us know Bhajana, who lived in the community for quite some time. She actually lives up in Oregon now, but she's in Brazil in the moment. And she sent me a poem. She is a beautiful poet and an artist, for those of you that know her. I don't know if she read the reading or if she tuned in. And I'm just going to read part of the poem where she says, she's writing, of course, to God, and she says, "You are my flitting love, my wild love. You flit away. When I look away, you flit away. Why, God? Why did you place me in an enchanted forest with wonders everywhere? Yet when I look away, you look away." And I'm not reading you the whole poem. For those of you who know Bhajana, you also know that it ends with, of course, her flying away with God, because she always ends on an upbeat. It's who she is. She's actually a beautiful soul. But it's so perfect what she captured there. Why do you make it so enticing, so beautiful? And she is sitting right now in Brazil in an enchanted forest. So she's using that and saying, but when I look away, then you're gone. And it's precisely what happens to all of us, not always with an enchanted forest, but with something that wants to draw us out. I wanted to read to you the full reading from the Bhagavad Gita. Swamiji took 2 lines. His 2 lines were, "Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny." That's a beautiful promise and a beautiful statement of truth. But I thought for this reading and for just the inspiration that it brings, let's listen to the words. This isn't even the whole reading. I sort of picked some and chose some, but it's much more of it. Krishna now is speaking to Arjuna, so it's God speaking to all of us. He says, Arjuna, none who works for self-redemption will ever meet an evil destiny, not here on earth, nor the other world will he encounter sorrow and destruction. So right away he's saying, do good deeds. Try and be the very best that you can, because you will carry that with you. And whether you're here or you're in the astral plane, you will be blessed by what you've done. And for us, I'm going to go on and read a little more, but for us, it means in the face of failure, because that's the topic today. Why do devotees fail? How do we fail? What happens when we, what we call fail? And we're going to redefine it in a moment. But Krishna is saying to Arjuna, don't get pulled down by your failures. Don't give them that power. You keep working as hard as you can for your self-redemption, and you will be blessed in this life and in the hereafter. And when at last he must return to earth, his past true deeds will cause him to take birth in some pure, noble-minded family, happy in virtue and prosperity. So he's saying, even if we are at times those foolish virgins who have become complacent, who have forgot to keep that pure devotion alive and present in our hearts, hard to do at all times, we will still take a birth in the next life of a higher spiritual quality. I actually find that very reassuring. Returning here, his good deeds of the past awaken in his heart the urge to seek with his former path with ever greater zeal, determined more than ever now to reach the one true goal of life, eternal bliss. Past yoga practice, like an unseen tide, propels him forcefully upon his way. So that's actually very beautiful. God's saying to us, we'll fail. We will fail. It's part of the human condition. But as long as we keep reawakening to the goal, as long as we keep coming back to making that effort, and Master said that the season of failure, I just saw his quote here, so I'll read it. The season of failure is the best time to plant seeds of success. So if we redefine, if we think about another line in the Gita that says what is day to the yogi is night to the man, and what is night to the yogi is day to the man, that we're not living in terms of, if we can stop ourselves, the human condition, the human heart that gets pulled towards emotion, towards, Gary was saying it so beautifully this morning, wanting things to be different, towards all of our likes and dislikes, towards all of our opinion. If we don't focus there, right in that moment when it looks like we've been pulled out, away from the divine, back into that place of duality, we say, wait a minute, I don't have to go there. I can do this one more time and do it right. This is the beauty of the story that many of us know about Master. He lived in a hermitage that sits up on a bluff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And he used to go down and take walks on the beach. Actually, it's called Swami's Beach. And one day he was out there and he was watching the fishermen out in the ocean. And they came in And he says they looked very dejected. Swamiji tells his story. So, I mean, it's a real story. But he looked at them and he said, not a good day. And they said to Yogananda, this is, no fish. They had no fish. And he said to them, try one more time. And Swami says, something in his voice made them believe him. And they went out and they came back in with their boat loaded. And for us, what that means, I'm reading to you a lot today, but these are wonderful words. Swamiji says, Swami Kriyananda, to me, this story illustrates a basic truth of human life, one that Yogananda often emphasized. No matter how many times a person fails, he need never accept failure as destiny's final judgment on him. We have a right as children of the infinite, he said, to God's infinite bounty. God's infinite love is our infinite love. God's infinite joy is ours. God's infinite forgiveness is ours. We are that same reality, so everything he is, we are too. And Swamiji is saying, never give up. Don't think of anything as a failure, because in reality, we can't fail. We can get sidetracked, we can make mistakes, but ultimately, we are who we are. We are that infinite love, and we will realize that one day. And Swamiji goes on to say, failure is never God's will for us. If we remember those words, so that when we get something wrong, we notice that we've been judgmental, we say no to a great opportunity to grow spiritually. We can't, in our heart, practice forgiveness with someone. We have likes and dislikes. We find ourselves being critical. This is what we're talking about as yogis. These are the failures that we're talking about. But if we say, no, this is not God's will for me, I will not accept it, immediately it's uplifting, because we are opening to and calling on that infinite love, and it changes us. It changes us. So we don't have to work on every single, I'll call them bad deed or bits of bad karma. We can't. I mean, get honest and think about it. Cost us 10 million more lives if we tried to do that. How many negative thoughts we have. How often are we drawn with our likes and dislikes? It's huge. No, but the instant that we allow that pure, infinite love of God, the Christ consciousness, the more often we can be ready. That our lamps, those good virgins, the wise virgins, they didn't need to be ready just in that moment, because, as Swamiji said, we never know. We never know when God will appear to us. So if we keep that devotion, the lamps of devotion burning, we're just changed. Suddenly we find we're not as judgmental. We didn't even think about it, but we're not that. We're not as angry, or our feelings aren't as hurt, or. Doesn't matter what it is. We didn't work on it, but we opened to God's love. And literally, we get healed that way. Swamiji tells, there's a whole chapter in Swamiji's book, The New Path. It's very powerful in terms of this topic. It's called, I think it's called Divine Tests. That's what I think the chapter is, I'm pretty sure. Very much like that, if it's not like that. He's so touchingly honest in that chapter, he reveals so much of what he went through to show us the way to be self-honest and then to flow through that. He talks about how he was tested one time when Yogananda took him out into the desert to 29 Palms, where Master had a place there where he often went to write. And he took Swamiji with him for 3 months, and he gave Swamiji an assignment. It had to do with editing. Doesn't really matter, because the end of the story is that the assignment was virtually impossible. Now, Yogananda knew that when he gave Swamiji that task to do, to edit this work, and he said to him, move at lightning speed, but don't change anything. Somebody gives you something to edit and says, don't change anything. It made no sense. Swamiji was 22 years old. 22. And he says he realized later, Yogananda knew that he couldn't accomplish that. And for 3 months, he was alone in his room while the other monks were going and visiting with Yogananda and working with him. And he just talks about how he spiraled down. I mean, he shares that with us. And then he talks about the instant that he heard Yogananda speaking to one of the nuns. The nun was being critical of his work, the non-work, really, the impossible work. And the nun was criticizing it to Yogananda. And Yogananda said, if you gave me $1 million, I wouldn't do what he did. Not for $1 million. This was back in the 1940s. $1 million was a lot of money. Swamiji says, like he would ever do anything for money. But the point is, he struggled. He also shares, and as soon as he heard that and felt, he wasn't even in the same room, but he felt the Master's energy, it changed his heart. He was uplifted. He also talks very openly there about a time when he started being very judgmental of Yogananda. He tells us that. And he said, I actually got to the place where I was saying to myself, he's kind, he's wonderful, he's loving, but he's just lacking wisdom. He said that of this avatar. Again, he was new, he was a child. And then the lesson comes through Master. Of course, Yogananda knew everything he was thinking. Why am I telling you these stories? Why did he tell us these stories? There's many more, because he wants to show us that we can, if we hold something as a failure, imagine how many lifetimes somebody could waste saying, my God, I was calling an avatar a failure, and he, lacking wisdom, and he knew, because he knows every thought in my head, so he knew I was saying that about him. That could be very embarrassing for many of us. Very. Imagine. But he's saying to us, don't go there. He tells this story, such a simple story. It was a true experience in his life of when he tried to quit smoking cigarettes. He tried, and he never could quit. He wouldn't smoke overnight. He says this. Anybody in this room that's ever been a smoker, you know. He said, then I'd have my first cup of coffee. As soon as I had the coffee, I wanted a cigarette, because there are things that we would pair with smoking a cigarette. And everybody knew, all of the people at where he was at school knew he tried, he didn't succeed. He tried, he didn't succeed. But he said, one day I knew in my heart, and I said to a friend of mine, I'm quitting smoking tomorrow morning. And the friend said, oh yeah. And Swamiji said, I just knew it. I did it. I walked around with a pack of cigarettes in my pocket for some time. I knew I would never smoke again. He said, but I never told myself, in all of those instances, I never said I failed. What I always said, and these words are so important. I'll bet there are many of us in this room who have used them at times to help pull ourselves up out of some very dark places. He said, I always say I haven't succeeded yet. And he said, within that, I always carried the potential for success, the knowing of success. So he had failed at a task, but he had succeeded in keeping his energy high. This is so important. It's all the difference in the world. And many of us always play with it. Well, we'll do something. We'll find ourselves grumbling about something. Then look at our friend that we were just grumbling to, like really drawing the energy down, not just for ourselves, often for whoever happens to be around, but then say to ourselves or say out loud, well, I guess I haven't conquered that yet, or I have not yet succeeded. And what goes unsaid is, but I will. It's so important because it really speaks to God's eternal, ever-present love, potential, care. And his potential is our potential. That's the next line that we always want to remember. I want to end by reading to you I just looked down at these words. Swamiji says in this chapter, he said, the worst of my ordeal, it was so painful for him when he said, I found myself plunged into violent doubts. It happens. It just happens. Maybe we've never doubted God, but we've done something else. I am so touched that he shares that with us. The whole chapter, he takes us through his test. And he says, man, this is another beautiful line, man's infinite potential for error as well as for wisdom unites him in consciousness with all men. Infinite potential for error, infinite potential for wisdom. Very easy, different side of the same coin, always coexisting. This is why Master said that line, that he always doubted the presence of Satan. He thought it was a figment of people's imagination, he says. And then he realized, and I don't have his words here, a universal conscious force whose sole aim is to keep all beings bound to the wheel of delusion. That's the force that we're working against. So the more that we can say, I haven't succeeded yet, but I will. Whatever we just failed at melts away. It becomes inconsequential if we can do that. Our ego's over here saying, you're horrible, you probably won't be able to do it, you'll never get it right, you are awful. Now we know enough to add, you put that energy out, you're hurting that person. It just goes on and on. The more we know, the more we could keep ourselves there. Don't do that. God wants us to succeed. And I just will end now with reading a poem that we all know, but it was so perfect for today, and just listening to it. This is God's Boatman, a poem that Yogananda wrote. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to Earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy, there where my Father distributes his all desire-quenching liquid peace. Listen to this. This is for us. Oh, I will come back again and again, crossing a million crags of suffering with bleeding feet. I will come, if need be, 1 trillion times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. These are the words that Yogananda, as a divine avatar, wrote to us, saying, God will come.
Let's take a moment of silence. We'll have some music now.
You notice all these beautiful clothes. We don't wear these every Sunday, but we have a concert right after service today that you're all warmly invited to, and these are little tastes of what you'll hear also later.
Where are his courtiers?